President Buhari drums support for APC membership drive.
I call on patriotic Nigerians to come out during the exercise, which starts on the 26th of January, and avail themselves of the opportunity to join the APC.
Nigeria records 964 new COVID-19 infections.
Residents lament as gas explosion claims 4 lives in Abo, Delta State.
Having gas plant station around or within the residence is not encouraging and it's not advisable.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on the maiden annual tax dialogue and matters arising.
Coronavirus pandemic from the outset dealt a major blow to global economies, and with the second wave of the pandemic still raging, it is not yet uhuru for most national economies.
In fact, an estimated 40 million people in Africa are projected by the African Development Bank to fall into extreme poverty due to the pandemic, while another 30 million jobs would most likely be lost.
This poses a great challenge to African countries, and that includes Nigeria, as these countries largely depend on taxation or taxes for government revenues that are critical to the quest for economic recovery.
Now, it's not surprising, therefore, that there have been ongoing conversations in the country on the need for an expansion of the nation's tax base by focusing more on collection of corporate taxes, which are said to have been evaded on the one hand or otherwise managed so well that the government is unable to get the required revenue. Plus, of course, infusion of digital technology into the collection and administration of tax processes to capture more tax revenues from the formal sector.
Now, very true, Kingsley. The COVID-19 pandemic has underscored the need to leverage on seamless technology for tax administration in view of the emerging trends for carrying out business transactions, most of which are now digital.
That's right, Kyria. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari at the maiden National Tax Dialogue organized by the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FRS, last week, directed all government agencies and business enterprises, including multinationals, to grant the FRS access to their database to achieve its mandate as part of the renewed quest to boost tax revenues as a means to addressing the paucity of funds available to government for national development.
The President equally mandated the FRS to utilize all available resources, including online platforms, to ensure the efficient collection of taxes. He also insisted that foreign businesses must not be allowed to continue exploiting the nation's markets and economy without paying appropriate taxes to the federal government.
Now, this has become all the more imperative given that Nigeria's 6% tax to GDP ratio from tax revenues, that is, it's considered a far cry from what should accrue to the nation's coffers from taxation. Of course, there is a need to enhance the competencies of tax administrators in the country to enable them face emerging challenges of tax administration in the country.
Now, what are the matters arising from the first National Tax Dialogue, and what needs to be done to modernize Nigeria's tax system? How can the nation's tax base be expanded and revenue leakages blocked?
Very pertinent questions you've posed there, Kyria. And those issues and more shall form the focus of our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today. I'm Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to the program. And we are, as always, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA, broadcasting from the nation's capital, Abuja.
And I am Kyrian Umayo, joining Kingsley to welcome you to the program. We shall bring you other segments in the course of the program. And now we begin with the morning news And Lolin Ebelame is our guide. Good morning, Lolin.
Good morning, Kieran and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the news highlights. President Muhammadu Buhari has appealed to prospective members of the All Progressives Congress to take advantage of the re-registration and revalidation exercise to come into the fold of Progressives family. The president, in a message, said APC has become a true platform for socio-political development in Nigeria.
Happening around the world, good citizens join political parties and use them to bring about the changes they desire. And therefore, endorsing the nationwide membership registration and the revalidation exercise embarked upon by our party, the All Progressive Congress. I call on patriotic Nigerians to come out during the exercise, which starts on the 26th of January, and avail themselves of the opportunity to join the APC.
Similarly, as the APC re-registration and revalidation exercise takes off, the President of the Senate, Ahmad Lawan, has appealed to prospective members to take full advantage of the exercise.
I'm therefore calling on all party men and women and every eligible Nigerian to come out and register in their wards. This will enable them to actively participate in the affairs of the party and the political administration and development of our beloved country, Nigeria. The exercise is open to all Nigerians, 18 years old and above. As we warmly embrace the exercise, I urge us all to be orderly and law-abiding and observe all the health safety protocols. Register as a member and join in strengthening the APC as a party of the Nigerian people and the promoter of peace, unity, and progress of our dear country.
Away from politics, the Buhari Media Organization, BMO, says the reduction in the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria by more than 3 million is a major achievement by the Buhari administration. On the occasion of the 2021 International Day of Education, the group, in a statement, says bringing down the figure from 10.9 million out-of-school children to 6.1 million in 1 year was achieved through the Ministerial Strategic Plan on Out-of-School Children, which was introduced at the onset of Buhari's administration second term in office. The BMO assures Nigerians that the federal government will not relent in efforts to ensure that the number of out-of-school children keeps going down. Now to COVID-19 update in Nigeria. 964 new COVID-19 infections have been recorded in the country in the last 24 hours. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, says the new infections were reported in 18 states and the FCT, bringing Nigeria's caseload to 121,566. Lagos tops the latest statistics with 360 new cases. FCT has 88, Ogun 73, Imo 72, Kaduna 67, Plateau 57, Abia and Osun have 41 cases, Rivers 32, Kano 26, Niger 24, and Benue 23 cases. Edo and Cross River states recorded 20 new cases, Akwa Ibom 8, Nasarawa 6, Zamfara 6, Ekiti 6, and Jigawa 4 new cases. Discharged cases now sum up to 97,228, while the death toll is 1,504. Meanwhile, the Imo State COVID-19 Task Force has commenced surveillance to ensure strict compliance with the coronavirus preventive measures. Members of the committee were at St. Joseph's Catholic Chaplaincy, Imo State University, Owerri, to monitor the church services.
serious about enforcement. We'll try persuasion, try to make people take the step they're supposed to do. But since there are not many people are really complying, we want to make sure that those guidelines by NCDC are enforced.
Nigerians are kicking against the sighting of gas stations in residential areas as about 4 persons lost their lives over the weekend in a gas explosion at a domestic plant along the Lagos-Asaba Expressway in Abu, Delta State. The inferno that ensued also destroyed property worth millions of naira around the area.
The extent of devastation. Of course, with gas, there's a lot of extensive damage that has been done. But the unfortunate thing is that we've lost people. We've lost 4 persons. One is a grown-up woman, and the other 3 are children. It's a very painful thing.
That's the morning news. The program continues with Kieran and Kinsley after this break. Good morning.
The Council of Our Fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together. Nigerian youths are about the greatest asset the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth Entrepreneurship Support Years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
The Council of Our Fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
For over 70 years, we've practiced healthy hygiene habits together. The world needs us to keep our fight going against germs. So let's wash our hands for 20 seconds regularly. Dettol. Protect what's worth fighting for.
When times are tough, we know that as a mother, one thing you should never compromise on is your family's oral health, because they deserve the best. Oral-B, all-round protection. Its great value, it protects your mouth from harmful bacteria and also protects you against tooth holes and gum problems which can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your family's teeth and gives them all-round protection. So remember, protect their future. Oral-B for healthier, stronger teeth in just 1 week.
watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Coming up next is a newspaper review.
All right, now we welcome Bayo Atoyabi, our reviewer. Bayo, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Kenya. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Hi, Bayo, good to see you. Hope you had a pleasant weekend.
Yes, very restful one.
Yeah. Okay, Daily Trust. Daily Trust newspaper. Untold story of Amoteku herders clash in Oyo community. That's on page 3. Kano's quest to revive ailing industries. That's on page 18. And then cultists burn 35 houses and market in Enugu community. That's on page 8. Now, the lead story this morning says, despite importation ban, foreign rice floods Nigerian markets. With the 3 riders, fear grips processors, growers want government intervention. We have seized thousands of bags, that's according to customs. Nemesis catching up with mailers, that's experts. Details on page 5. Of course, the photo story there actually captures the entire thing. It shows bags of foreign rice conveyed by Porter at Yankwali market in Jos. We have one foreign rice at Otako market here in Abuja. And of course, what appears to be a seized consignment of smuggled rice by the customs, and that's in Lagos. So an indication that it's really going around the nation. All right, below that, quick notice. Southwest governors meet NTA today. That's on page 4. 3,000 displaced as bandits kill 6, abduct 5 in Niger State. It's on page 8. ABU, other tertiary institutions can resume from Monday, according to the Kaduna State government. That's on page 33. Gunmen invade orphanage, kidnap 11 in FCT Council. 31. That's on page 31 of Daily Trust newspaper, Kinsley.
Okay, let's also take a look at the window page of the Nation newspaper. Above the name flag, it says, Monarch declares Igboho God sent. Monarch declares Igboho God sent. I can't be intimidated. That's one rider there. Details are on page 9. And on page 5, 15 die in Kaduna road accident, 3 killed in Niger. And anxiety in markets as CBN holds MPC Pali. That's the Monetary Policy Committee. APC targets 60 million members in new drive. Below the nameplate, it says 40 billion naira end allowances released to ASU. Buhari grants no work, no pay waiver. And below that, Zulum and others mourn Dikwa monarch. Okorocha, I'm still in APC, that's page 7. Governors and Mieti Allah made over quit notice to herders. Red alert in Southwest as ultimatum expires. Nothing against Fulani. That's one of the 2 riders there for that story. Nigeria to buy AstraZeneca vaccine. 70% of resident doctors infected with COVID-19. That's a rider to that. And you see the illustration on the front page there. It says COVID-19 statistics of confirmed cases, discharges, deaths, and tests. That's since March 2020. And the numbers are there for all to see. By January this year, which hasn't ended, the country has confirmed cases of 23,158, discharged 16,156, fatalities 158, and tests so far over 220,000. Now, COVID-19 situation, that's the other sidebar to that story. It says, inside Yaba Lagos Treatment Center, confusion over Umahi's COVID-19 status. The WHO secures 40 million doses of Pfizer vaccine. Unilag set for non-fiscal post-UTME test. UK vaccination drive expands as virus toll nears 100,000. And Edo Task Force visits churches to enforce compliance. South must unite to secure regions, says Kanu, and immigration chief abducted. That's the immigration spokesperson. Was kidnapped in Edo yesterday. That's on our way to the church. All right, Bayo.
Thank you. Let's start with the COVID-19. The second wave of COVID-19 we are witnessing now began in the first week of December 2020. That week, November 29 to December 3rd, we had a higher number of 1,607. Since then, there has been massive increase, especially coming from the Yuletide. January 3rd to 9th, we have 9,833. January 10 to 16, we have 9,880. Last Friday, we got the highest of 2,314 in one single day. This increase are due to non-adherence to non-pharmaceutical protocols, especially during the Yuletide period. As at yesterday, we had 1,000. As at last week, we had 1,241,230 samples tested, out of which we have had 120,602 cases. We have had 95,901 people discharged, but 23,933 are overstretching our facilities because they are in treatment. Unfortunately, we have lost 1,501 compatriots. Last week, we had 81 deaths. Saturday, January 23rd, there was 1,633 cases. On Sunday, yesterday, we had 964 cases. It's the first time that it's coming down from the 1,000 digit. And as at now, yesterday we had 2 deaths, and this has brought the total of deaths to 1,504. We need to continue to be vigilant to push COVID-19 away. Meanwhile, governors of the Southwest are to hold a meeting at Akure today with leadership of Cattle Breeders Association, Miyetti Allah. They are to be joined by their counterpart from Kebbi and Jigawa. The governor of Ondo, you will recall, had ordered illegal occupants of government reserve forests to register with the state government or vacate the forest. The presidency had cautioned about the danger of eviction and its constitutional implication. Alhaji Bello Garba, the leader of the Cattle Breeders Association, says that we are going to work with the governors to unmask criminals who are masquerading as cattle breeders to inflict mayhem on innocent citizens. Meanwhile, a delegation of Oyo State government has mandated a de-escalation of tension to avoid undue politicization and ethnicization of the tension in Igaga in the Barapa local government area. Special advisor to the governor on security, former commissioner of police Fatai Owuseni, has sued for peace. He was speaking at a town hall meeting where he says that people should embrace dialogue and desist from wanton destruction of lives and property. Mr. Owuseni said 51 suspects linked to kidnapping and other crimes committed in Okiogun and the Barapa area have been since arrested. Many of them are already being charged to court. Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police has directed that those involved in the crisis in the area should be apprehended. The Commissioner of Police, CP Ngozi Onadeko, has appealed to all to be calm, and she's supposed to summon a meeting to the command headquarters at Ibadan to speak with all the parties that are involved. An appeal has also gone to the Association of Traditional Rulers in the 19 northern states and the FCD. They appealed to Governor Akeredolu to rethink his plan. Dr. Alani Adeyemi, the Secretary General of that association, says that the Obas in 19 states says criminals involved in the kidnapping and allied crimes should be fished out and treated based on their criminal activities, rather than bundling everybody together as criminals. There has been youthful reactions too. Arewa Youth Consultative Forum has demanded a reversal of last Monday's order by Governor Akeredolu. Shetima Yerima says that we must guard against any act that will create a war-like situation in Nigeria. We must learn from our past mistake. Odua People's Congress are also talking. They have warned against playing politics and ethnicizing the worrisome state of security in the southwest. Postman for Odua People's Congress, Wasiu Afolabi, says millions of law-abiding Fulani men and women live in Yoruba land in peace and have no cause to have any fear of alarm. It is the criminal elements hiding under the cloak of herdsmanship to perpetrate evil against law-abiding citizens that should be fished out. Sad news occurred over the weekend. Larry King, the guest of a CNN interview program for over 25 years, has died. Lawrence Ziegler is his name, but he commenced his career on Radio Mutual in Florida. It was 1985 that Ted Turner, the owner of CNN, invited him, and they created Larry King Live as his screen name, as also the program name. He is known to have, for his trademark, suspenders. The suspenders he started using when he survived heart surgery. He lost weight, so he had to use suspenders to hold his pants, as Americans will call it. We call it trousers here, in place. But he's a man like a cat with many lives. You won't believe it. He suffered from, he had heart surgery. He's also suffered from diabetes. He also was a patient of prostate cancer, and he had bypass surgery. He was able to survive all this. Unfortunately, last December, he tested positive for COVID-19 and underwent treatment. There was no news about him until the announcement about his death yesterday. He also had to endure tragedies. Two of his children, a daughter and a son, one died of heart attack, the other of diabetes. And he married 7 times. His last wife, which he divorced in 2008, I think, 2008, was married to him for 20 years. And he says, well, I have lived my life, I love the microphone. It is the only one that never let me down.
All right. Thank you, Barry.
Just before we take all that, Larry King was a phenomenon, no question about that. Well, of course, audiences elsewhere around the world got to know him much better after CNN gained global prominence from 1991. That's actually from 1990, and then, of course, with the Gulf War of 1991. I mean, you could see Larry King every day. It was a great phenomenon. He's so rest in peace. It also tells you if you are passionate about something, stick with that passion and get it on. Age is certainly no barrier. Even after he left CNN, and that was about 10 years ago, he still had another program that he was running. This time it was on radio because, of course, he went back to his first love. And that's the key thing. He made a name for himself. He was a great guy, as Americans would say.
All right. Now, editorial for today is
I know editorial is very important, but something, just this one point. It says 40 billion naira earned allowances released to ASU. One of the reasons why they went on strike, Buhari grants no work, no pay waiver. Because the rule is when you are on strike, of course, you don't work and then you don't get paid. This is a waiver. This is a waiver that ASU has received from time to time whenever they go on strike. Well, the question also has to be asked, is this what happens in other jurisdictions? When labor unions go on strike and the no work, no pay rule is applied, say in Europe, for instance, how do the members survive? We saw a number of university professors and other lecturers cry that they had not been paid. The university lecturers who contribute check-off dues to ASU should find out what their check-off dues are used for.
Well, you see, in other clients, when there is strike like that and you are not paid, the union takes upon the responsibility of paying you stipends during the period. But the good thing is that the release of the 40 billion and waiving the no work, no pay is an olive branch that at least will allow the university to settle down. The danger now is the impending strike by NANS, SANU, and the technologies.
The thing is that in this country, strike has become a phenomenon, and when one group is suspending the strike, another, perhaps a similar one is starting, just like the non-academic staff union, they're starting their own when ASU has just called off. So I don't understand the mix at all, because it's not helping matters, especially in the education sector. And see, it's not the end of ASU strike anyways, because in the next couple of months now, you hear one other aspect will crop up, and ASU will go on strike again. And with this whoever I Kingsley read about, it's going to exacerbate this entire situation, because even the lecturers are not going to accept that. They won't accept that idea of no work, no pay waiver. We've tried that in the past,
But that is the law.
It's in law.
And then they say you fall back on your check of dues. I mean, the lecturers get their dues deducted as source to ASU. Who let them find out what their check of dues are being used for.
I don't think ASU is so organized to that extent, to the extent of, using check-off dues to take care of your staff while on strike. I'm not sure they're not organized. Just like Bayo pointed out, what happens in Europe. In Europe you have organized labor, where you have labor being in so many businesses. They have some business, organizations apart from just check-off dues. They have some business establishments, investments here and there, and if anything happens, they can keep themselves on, while the strike, lasts. But here, it's not the same. It's either government brings the money or nothing happens. All right, editorial for this morning. You're talking about resuscitating local vaccine production. That's COVID-19 is the key guide, the way it's written here. Resuscitating local vaccine production. Bayo.
Well, the danger here is that we need vaccine. Vaccine is the antidote to ending the coronavirus. But unfortunately, we now have to depend on vaccines that either donated or the ones that we can buy. But the editorial is happening on the fact that there was an initiative as far back as the 1940s to develop local means of vaccine production. The editorial is questioning what has become of that. But already, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has given indications that they are exploiting cooperation with other vaccine manufacturers to see a template whereby vaccines can be manufactured locally here in Nigeria. When they get the patent from the original owners, then I think we have the facilities in the country to be able to produce and sustain the vaccine. That is the only way we'll be able to meet the target. Otherwise, the 100,000 that we are expecting is supposed to have been end of January, but now told is coming in February. And under the CAVI, the Continental Vaccine Program, we are going to get maybe another 40 million. That, compared to our population, is still a drop in the ocean. And so local vaccine production is one of the alternatives that we can quickly boost the initiative to attack and defeat COVID-19.
There is a high demand for vaccine, across the globe. No nation that does not want the vaccine. So if we are hoping to get as many doses as we expect, it's going to be a mirage. And I think what is important here is what you've just said, that we should be able to collaborate with other vaccine manufacturers to see how we can also start our own local work. We have asked the person on this program on how we can look inwards here and start doing something. Well, when we were told that when the vaccine that we're expecting comes in, that NAFDAC is going to look into the vaccine, I was wondering, okay, fine, perhaps NAFDAC may have the wherewithal, but how would they determine the content of the vaccine coming in? What is the capacity, of course, to know if this vaccine are going to be good or not? How would they determine that? Because they don't do vaccine production in the first place.
For any food and drug that is imported in the country, NAFDAC has the mandate and they have the capacity and the facilities to be able to ascertain its usage in Nigeria.
All right, Bayo Toyebe, we appreciate you being around. We can see you again tomorrow. It's Good Morning Nigeria, and we are on the network service of the NTA. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we'll go ahead with our conversation.
A scorecard like no other. Government has put in place measures and initiatives principally targeted at youths, women, and the most vulnerable groups in our society. These included broad plan to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. The creation of 75 billion naira National Youth Investment Fund to provide opportunities for the youths, and the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Survivor Fund, through which government is A. Paying 3-month salaries of the staff of 100,000 micro, small and medium enterprises. B. Paying for the registration of 250,000 businesses at the Corporate Affairs Commission. C. giving a grant of 30,000 naira to 100,000 artisans and guaranteeing market for the product of traders. These are in addition to many other initiatives such as farmer money, trader money, market money, N-Power, N-Tech, and N-Agro. These and more in spite of a recession and a global pandemic. Although social media as a channel of communication is inherently harmless, it becomes harmful and damaging when used without discretion and thoughtfulness. Bad social media users spread rumors and fake news without verification. But good social media users stop, reflect, and verify information before sharing it. Be a good social media user. Stop the spread of fake news. Verify the authenticity of your source and use social media responsibly for a better Nigeria. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, in collaboration with the National Orientation Agency.
Every day.
Nestle, good food, good life.
I bring you wonderful news. The village headmaster is coming back to your screen. Mo wire abi mi o wire. Teacher lo mo, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Teacher jọ̀wọ́, a fẹ́ lọ wá nǹkan jẹ. Ọmọ onírẹsì ti dé.
Ajebo na better school for last gidi. Not be all this on a rugged school for Ijabi. I don't know for you.
It's called Oja Village. Kadesi, we no happy at all.
And I know that even you too, you are getting a lot of orders too. Hey, we are trying, shall sweep her leg out. She was standing there. Sweep it.
I love you so much.
And how did I give you the impression that I was interested in that position?
50-year anniversary.
You mean anniversary?
I mean, that's why I talk with that now.
Not for me. Not for me because of Pamio.
For over 70 years, we've practiced healthy hygiene habits together. The world needs us to keep our fight going against germs. So let's wash our hands for 20 seconds regularly. Dettol. Protect what's worth fighting for.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Our conversation this morning is on the first national tax dialogue and matters arising. But before the conversation kickstarts, let's take a report put together by our correspondent, Abdul Salam Jibril.
Around the world, taxation is a fundamental way for countries to generate public revenues to finance investments in human capital, infrastructure development, and the provision of services for citizens and businesses. With the current COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected various economies globally, an effective tax system that is fair and equitable cannot be overemphasized. In Nigeria, experts maintain that the tax system over the decades has been characterized by poor tax administration, associated with high levels of tax evasion, large informal sectors, more corruption, and less investment. They stress that modern tax systems should seek to optimize tax collections while minimizing the burden on taxpayers to comply with tax laws. In recognition of this, the Buhari administration, under the Finance Act 2020, seeks to review and amend several tax legislations towards effective tax administration in the country. By so doing, it consolidates into one statute many tax provisions from different tax statutes. The main thrust of the Act is to increase revenue of the federal government and to curb avenues of tax evasion over the years. Last week, President Muhammadu Buhari, while declaring open the maiden annual National Tax Dialogue organized by the Federal Inland Revenue Service in Abuja, urged Nigerians to see the payment of taxes as a patriotic obligation, as taxes have a key role to play in making growth sustainable and equitable, especially in the context of the COVID-19 crisis.
The Federal Inland Revenue Service has my mandate to speedily put all measures in place to fully implement programs to stamp out base erosion and profit shifting in all their ramifications and generally automate its tax processes. It is therefore incumbent to do all that is required in order to efficiently collect tax revenue due from transactions carried out using local and foreign online platforms.
What are the matters arising from the first National Tax Dialogue and what needs to be done to modernize Nigeria's tax system? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will provide their various perspectives shortly.
All right, with us in the studios now to discuss the matters arising, let's welcome Mr. Dick Iri, as Coordinating Director, Compliance Support Group of the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
Good morning,
It's a real pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you, and good morning, Nigeria.
We also have with us Mr. Oluwafemi Oluwaniyi, the Coordinating Director, Tax Operations Group of the FIRS. Mr. Oluwaniyi, delighted to have you with us this morning.
My pleasure, too. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Equally here in the studio is Mohammed Lawal Abubakar. He's the Coordinating Director, Executive Chairman's Group. You're also welcome to the program, sir.
Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's begin the conversation with Mohammed Lawal Abubakar, of course, who has been a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria and has been involved in a broad range of activities in the tax environment. But Mr. Abubakar, why the National Tax Dialogue, the first of which took place last week?
Thank you very much. The first annual tax dialogue that took place last week actually is a demonstration of commitment to improving taxation and tax administration in Nigeria. It's also a show of political will on the part of government in the sense that the tripod of tax system, namely the tax policy, tax laws, and tax administrations have been looked into. And as we can see in the speech of the president, he categorically stated that all agencies of government, companies and multinationals should allow FRS access to their data in the course of discharging their operational activities. The National Tax Dialogue actually provided opportunity for various stakeholders to brainstorm on how to reposition Nigerian tax system. And the two topics that were discussed, namely taxation in the post-COVID economy and taxation as a panacea for national development, actually align with the tripod of tax system. The tax policy statement, for example, on reduction of income tax and laying more focus on indirect taxation. We can see as a policy statement, the laws have been, certain provisions in the relevant laws have been amended. For example, the personal income tax has been amended in areas of minimum exemption of employees that earn below the minimum wage, the national minimum wage, which is 30,000 per month. All employees that earn below 30,000 per month are exempted by the provision of Finance Act 2020. And also you can see in the 2019 Finance Act, the value-added tax has been increased from 5% to 7.5%, and there was a reduction in income tax as is applicable to companies, especially small companies. And we saw in that provision that companies, especially small-scale companies, have been whose turnover are below 25 million have been exempted from paying income tax. So those are examples of provisions that affect the policy direction of government and the laws that will enable tax authorities to implement them. There are other provisions that, the other amendment in the various laws that were discussed. For example, the 2020 Finance Act that amended 14 tax laws were discussed. Company income tax, value-added tax, capital gains tax, personal income tax, education tax, and the rest have been, various provisions in those laws have been amended. So by and large, the dialogue, being the first of its kind, is expected that the Federal Inland Revenue Service will implement especially the provisions of the amended laws, and then reiterate its focus on ensuring that the tax base, which we've been always talk about, being expanded in all the relevant areas. Thank you.
Now, you have actually mentioned a good number of issues that came up during that dialogue: tax law, tax administration, reduction in personal income tax, and all of that. They seem to be complex a little bit, for an ordinary Nigerian to appreciate. Now, was there any kind of challenge or challenges or impediments, if you like, before this dialogue that the FIRS has not been able to iron out? Did this dialogue really open a new vista of opportunity for FIRS to appreciate tax and taxation much more proper in Nigeria before now?
Yes, we all know that we've been facing problem of compliance, and despite the fact that our mission statement, the mission statement of FRS, which says to operate a transparent and efficient tax system that optimizes tax revenue collection and voluntary compliance. Compliance has not been voluntary in our own case because we have seen cases of where taxes are being collected by people assigned as agents for collection for FRS, and problem that we face in that regard is adequate remittance of such taxes collected from people who have paid them and remitting to the appropriate accounts of government. For example, value-added tax. People that have been assigned, registered as agents for collection of value-added tax in most cases are found wanting. And what we see, despite the deadline for returns in that regard, we just have to follow up again. And in some cases, you have to carry out audit before you get such taxes properly remitted. So that is an example of a challenge, and there are so many numerous. For example, even having a comprehensive tax database that will show clearly the actual number of taxable persons under the relevant taxes, personal income tax, or even the company income tax, has been an issue. So the discussion, the dialogue actually emphasized again the need for all relevant agencies to synergize in bringing their records together that will assist the tax authorities to establish adequate tax, a comprehensive tax database for taxation.
Okay, thank you very much, Emel Abubakar. Let's bring in now Mr. Dekiri, who is the Coordinating Director, Compliance Support Group. But we're still on the tax dialogue. What was the attendance like? I mean, we read that there were stakeholders who were present. Were all the stakeholders tax collectors, or did they also have some of the big taxpayers? And if so, what were their complaints, assuming they were present?
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning again, Nigerian. The attendance was very encouraging in the sense that it cut across all stakeholders, starting from even the president addressing the conference, attending and also addressing the virtual, and that gives credence to the belief and the political will that we need to really march out our direction this year. The governors here, the National Assembly, the lawmakers were duly represented. Other stakeholders that we need to also collaborate with to ensure that we achieve our purpose or objective for this year were all present. So even just as you asked, taxpayers were also well represented, and some of them came as the taxpayer themselves or their major agents, like the four big consulting firm that we have in Nigeria. They were all represented there. So I would say it was quite encouraging. Kingsley.
All right. Let's turn to Mohammed Lawal. Let's turn to Luafemi Oluwaniyi. Yes, the coordinating director of tax operations. Now, when it comes to operations, one would like to ask if your operations are properly detailed with respect to the fact that there are persons or even companies, wealthy people in this country who are known not to be paying taxes. Is there any kind of record or a kind of data of Nigerians, especially the wealthy ones, who some of them ride on cars worth 50 million naira, some of them have posh houses, some have some unidentified businesses that they run in this country, they're ruling out millions of naira by way they display their wealth and what have you. Yeah. Is there any kind of I don't know, is there any strategy by FIRS to fish out such persons? Because overseas, well, in other jurisdictions, it will not happen.
I understand what you are talking about. And once again, let me thank you and our viewers for the opportunity given us to tackle some of these issues. I first of all like to start by saying for Federal Inland Revenue Service, we administer more we are more into corporate taxes, that is to say the taxes of companies and enterprises more than individuals as in persons. The states, the individual states' internal revenues actually have exclusive reserve of administering taxpayers, individual taxpayers' taxes. It will interest you to know that myself and my colleagues here, even as staff of FRS, we don't pay. Our taxes do not go to FRS, it goes to, at best, the FCT IRS. You are supposed to pay your tax to the state internal revenue of where you are resident. The states will have more to do in that area, and I'm sure that their eyes have opened to the need to up their games towards ensuring that individual Nigerians who are evading taxes are brought to appropriate taxes in the tax net. Having said that, again, in the FIRS, we are involved in some ways, in a part. For example, non-residents, that is individuals who are not Nigerians. We handle them, and what we have done in that area, and of course also to a large extent our own people who are outside, members of the diplomatic service and the armed forces, you know, such individuals are still within the purview of the FIRS. So what we have done in the regard of your question is to delve into the area of mutual exchange of information with other clients. I was in a meeting just 2 days ago where these issues came to the fore, and it's all about our plan in the year to ensure that the flow of information we envisage between other countries. We have already signed some agreements such that there will be mutual exchange of information whereby Nigerians who have assets abroad, who have wealth, also this issue of illicit financial flows of money where you think you have a safe haven somewhere in the UK and your money is not visible. Of course, there's no hiding place again. And such authorities in the overseas countries are under obligation to make such information available to us. Likewise, we to vice versa. So we have deployed a lot of money in that regard, and we are also thinking of the appropriate technology to be able to hook onto the databases they will provide. In this instance, the banks have a lot to do. We have sensitized them, we are carrying them along, and I just believe that in a short while, there will be much deliveries in that regard, to the extent that there will, like I said before, no hiding place for people to hide their money and run away from paying tax. So that's the much that we have done in that regard. And I hope, like I said earlier, that the states will also borrow a leaf from this and ensure that they harness all the potentials in that regard. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. There are a number of matters arising from your explanation now. I was just wondering, back to ML Abubakar, and indeed any other of the guests could also take this question. Did you have in attendance at the dialogue all the 38 tax authorities in the country? That's to say FIRS, the FCT, and then the 36 states Internal Revenue Service. Did you have all of them in attendance?
Yes, in the sense that in line with COVID-19 protocol, some guests joined virtually. The space provided for at the banquet hall, actually accommodated as much as possible, and we can see that we could also see that even the minister participated actively virtually. Some participants from Lagos that also were panelists actually participated from Lagos. And to add to what was said about bringing or adequately imposing tax on, or getting adequate taxes from individual, especially high net worth individual, is by way of getting our data synergized. For example, we have the BVN, which is being kept by NIBSS, that is Nigerian Interbank Settlement System, under the supervision of CBN. We also have the NIN, which is being captured by Nigerian Identity Management Commission. Then the taxpayer identification number, of course, that is being captured by tax authorities. If you are able to harmonize these three data and put them together for tax purpose, there will be no hiding place for any individual, in the sense that the BVN already has access to all the accounts, irrespective of where they are within the country. The NIN also shows details of who you are, either taxable or not taxable. Then what is expected for us as tax authorities, especially the state, as earlier mentioned, is to leverage on this information and then issue TIN to the individuals. And in doing that, you are able to expand your tax base, you are able to reach out to all those that are supposed to be taxable going by the jurisdiction. As earlier said, we have 38 tax authorities, each of them administering taxes, and each of them standing, having autonomy, so to say, to discharge their responsibility. The Federal Inland Revenue Service has its areas of jurisdiction as far as personal income tax is concerned, as earlier said. So this leveraging on this information will be able to adequately bring people to tax.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed El Abubakar. I was just wondering, because part of what we hear from time to time is that Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio is very low. It's 6%. I've been asking myself, how is that tax to GDP ratio calculated? Do we take into cognizance the many taxes and levies that you find at the subnational levels? I mean, my colleague Kieran was talking about property tax. Property tax, of course, is common in only a few states, Lagos being one of the most prominent. But there is no state you will go to in the Federation, and indeed any local government, if you were to go to the markets now, you will see they will paste photocopies of all kinds of receipts for what they have paid. These are for small businesses and so on and so forth. So when we are calculating tax to GDP, because that's part of the rationale for this renewed drive to get more tax revenue, how is it calculated? Do you bear in mind to say, look, state governments, they get their IGR, which is a measure of a form of taxation, and so on and so forth, or is it solely, receipts by the Federal Inland Revenue Service? Dick Deere.
Okay, thank you, Kingsley. Actually, the truth is we have a challenge in Nigeria with data, in the sense that we have data in silos. Though this figure, the tax to GDP, is given by the Nigerian NBS, so Bureau of Statistics. But just as you rightly observe, we have the 3 tiers of government, which also collect different levy, different taxes. But I'm very sure that all these figures are not pulled together. But be that as it may, the international best practice require that they will rely on only available data. So part of the focus of this dialogue is to see how we can harness all these data that are hanging in various silos, So if you listen to the president's address, that we as the big brother, so to say, in the tax administration, should be given access to access all other agencies' record. And by the time we collaborate and bring all this information together, we are likely to shoot the tax to GDP ratio higher than what it is now. Actually, FRS is focusing on raising it to about 15% this year. And that is why you see the focus of FRS. We are giving direction of where we are putting emphasis on. We are not increasing the tax rate. We are not increasing the tax number of taxes. But there are so many other areas which technology can help us to harness and bring in all the taxes that ought to have come into the basket that we can measure against GDP and see that we achieve this higher GDP ratio that we are currently suffering from.
One will be thinking of which other area are you talking about here? Because invariably we have government agencies, federal staff, you have certain businesses, companies, and what have you. Which other group of people want to break into the tax net? You know, because it's so specific that you are focusing on government agencies and parastatals and multinationals and what have you. I don't even know how many of the multinationals we have in this country from where you drive a tax from. So which other group of people are you trying to bring into the net? Because now we're talking about the state IRS, which also has the jurisdiction over the states. So which other net are you trying to expand? For you to now make up what we're talking about, tax to IGR.
Now, let me thank you. Let me explain this further. You see, the lot of the government agencies, for example, that I mentioned, the MDA, by law they are appointed as collecting agents, and we have instances where what they collect is not fully remitted to the basket that where the MBS will now measure against a GDP. Now, with technology that we are now going to ride on this year, online platform, whatever platform that we can plug in at the source of making all this payment, this money swept into the bank and CBN, all the loopholes, the leakages and the wastages will all be collated together, and the basket will be more richer, which we cannot compare to GDP. Not that we are going to bring any other different, but there are some other people who are also there who are not yet in the tax net. Those ones will come in by way of registration. By the time we harness the linkage between our NIM, for example, BVN, and all these silos, different identity structure that we have in the country. By the time we bring them together and we can tap into those data, you see that it's going to increase what comes into that basket.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Oluwani, I would like you to also speak to the point, the question I asked, namely, how do we much more accurately calculate our tax to GDP ratio? Because, again, it's part of the things that you hear, that our tax to GDP ratio is one of the lowest in West Africa, in Africa, if not the entire world. And when you look around, just by mere casual observation, it's almost unimaginable that we don't have taxpayers in Nigeria. There are taxpayers in Nigeria. Yeah. At the local government level, at the state level, even if you have money in the bank, and let's say even a fixed deposit, at maturity, there's a withholding tax, that's 10%.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true. Is it to an extent what my colleague said about the issue of data gathering and the reliability of such in Nigeria is an issue. And I would subscribe to the fact that much of the data that should have found itself in the computation of that ratio will probably have been lost here and there in terms of our culture vis-a-vis figures. But then, to my mind, the problem is more, and also to address a little bit of the question about which other set of individuals or group of taxpayers are we thinking of bringing into the tax net. Apparently none. The groups have been identified, but it's a question of, in each group, how many really are captured in our tax net, which, by God's grace, we are believing technology will help us a lot. And all these integrations that my colleagues have mentioned earlier. But beyond that, I think some empirical study has shown that this, our lamentable ratio of tax to GDP, which we always say is about the lowest in the world, I believe it has more to do with the individuals. You have mentioned high net worth people who are not paying taxes. Somebody said South Africa, for example, whatever their ratio is in the probably 20-something%. About 2/3, if not 3/4 of that, is delivered from individuals. The corporate taxes are just about, at best, 1/3 of that. The remaining 2/3 to 3/4 come from individual taxpayers. And I've looked at the 6% we are reporting in Nigeria, that nothing less than 4 of that 6 is from corporate taxes, from what FIRS is delivering. FIRS contribution to the 6 is about 4, which is about 2/3. So if we will go by maybe just averagely, like about what happens in South Africa, if we will assume that all our individuals are compliant, at least to a good extent, if we will see ourselves get
where the nickname na COVID-19
properly. So what we also did was to take
6%, even as it were now, we should probably be something in the region of about the 4% of F times 12. From the individuals. These corporate entities are to a large extent compliant, especially the big ones, and it's like we keep on flogging and overflogging the dead horse. Thank you.
Good point. You talk about leakages and from individuals. It could not necessarily be correct. Kirian, again, what we see just by mere observation. In South Africa, that you have cited a couple of times in your explanation, do they use tax consultants? Do they use tax collectors who are being compensated politically? Some of them, I'm talking now at the subnational level. These are some of them are political party thugs, who've been assigned to go and be collecting rates and levies in all kinds of places. Do they use them in South Africa? And how much do those collectors actually remit to the coffers of the particular agency?
That's actually part of the problem which you have just identified in terms of how much of these levies and taxes really, especially at the subnational level, like you said, get delivered into the pot of government revenue. That is very prevalent in Nigeria. I agree with you. But you see, my point is that there's no point leaving the substance and chasing shadows. In terms of proportion, really, sincerely, all these levies, all these monies being extorted at the local government, at the maybe sometimes at the state levels, at best put together, have no comparison to the the personal income tax itself that should be delivered from individuals if they are sincere enough, especially the high net worth individuals that have been identified in the course of this discussion. It's a question of we have a belief in the tax system that about 3% deliver, about 3% of the population deliver about 97% of the money that is collected at the end of the day. So if we can identify these big individuals, if you can go after these high net worth people we are talking about, a single one will more than bring in what tens of millions of all the people being chased about at the local level. Thank you.
Permit me to add to what to this discussion on GDP, tax to GDP ratio. One of the issues that was discussed at the dialogue and which was very prominent too was the issue of this incentive And it was made clear that, look, must we necessarily give away our taxes in form of incentive? Are there other ways that we can encourage investors to come into Nigeria? For example, tie incentive to employment, tie incentive to where we have infrastructural deficit, instead of just say, okay, when you come, you will be on tax holiday for 5 years, 10 years. So the incentive is also eating into. Nigeria have the highest number of incentive scattered all over various laws of the Federation. And these are impacting negatively on ability of the revenue agencies to actually collect taxes. And this is what government is looking at. If we can focus on the indirect taxes, that is the consumption tax, for example, which is easy to collect, and we make sure that those who are acting as collecting agents remit completely and fully what they have collected on behalf of the government, our taxes will increase and we can have a higher ratio of tax to GDP.
It's quite understood, when we talk about incentives. Of course, that government also has to function effectively. Yes. Government also has to attract investors from outside the country if we're going to break even economically, right? So back to Abubakar, let's look at the issue of foreign companies operating in Nigeria. I also want to talk about the issue of hiring consultants. Does FIRS hire consultants to assist it in tax collection? And what actually encourages the foreign companies from evading tax? Because it's highly believed that if all the multinationals are paying tax duly, that of course they're going to have we're going to make much more money from taxation.
Yes, as earlier said, we have a marching order now by Mr. President to have access to all the records of multinationals. And the use of consultants, as you said, the FRS Act, for example, does not permit use of consultant for assessment, collection, or even accounting for taxes. What the law permits us to do is to use them for training, for example, to enhance capacity, manpower capacity. So if certain tax authority are seen doing that, I think it's they are going out of their way. For example, at the state level, yes, we can see some instances where consultants are assigned to carry out direct collection of taxes, which actually been an issue, and I know many tax authorities, many states tax authority are de-emphasizing that practice. So going back to the issue of getting multinationals into our tax net, the exchange of information mechanism that we have in place actually going to assist us. We also have double tax agreement double taxation agreement that we signed with some countries. These are all avenues for which we will use to bring such individuals or companies into the tax nets.
Okay, Mr. Dick Deary, yes, tell us, what are the special challenges with getting multinational companies to pay correct and appropriate taxes to the jurisdiction where they operate? We know if there are some mechanisms that they use, over invoicing, profit shifting, but what are the particular challenges that you face in tracking them and ensuring that, listen, this is what you are supposed to pay, and then you get them to pay, otherwise they face the consequences?
Now, the multinational or non-resident, so to say, we have a department called the International Tax Department, which focus on these multinationals and also the non-resident. Now, the 2019 Finance Act has introduced a significant economic presence, that if you do any business in Nigeria, you derive the income from Nigeria, or you do management or render any services, professional technical services, that the benefit is enjoyed in Nigeria, the tax on such services should be paid in Nigeria. So these are some of the measures that government have put in place. Before now, the issue of fees base was a challenge, that they are not here, they are not based here, so they are not subject to tax. But with the introduction of the Finance Act 2019, which have been reinforced in the 2020 Finance Act 2, extending to the personal income tax dimension, anybody that has something to do with Nigeria now will pay the tax here. In addition to that, there's also this country-by-country reporting regulation that we have put in place, that wherever you are, multinational, you must know who is the entity, which entity is reporting on all the activities that have significant presence in Nigeria. And that way, we are able to harness what comes from all these multinational. We are really working on them big time, and we are getting good results.
Okay, fine.
What about multinationals? Multinationals who are operating at the subnational level. Do you have registration?
The multinational operator at subnational level will be the employees of those multinational. Just as my colleague mentioned here, the subnational focus is on the individual that reside in those states.
That's personal income tax.
Personal income tax. That's where their tax goes to. But as an entity that's recognized by law as a limited or whether a PLC or whatever, your taxes go to the federal, and that's where we come in.
Well, training and retraining of tax officers was one of the issues that resonated at the dialogue last week. And the question of more effectively tracking multinationals is one. I don't know what the capacity is, but obviously, I mean, it's not all of the details we're going to discuss on air. But Mr. Olubade, I'm just wondering, over invoicing and profit shifting, these are the very well-known mechanisms. They call it tax avoidance, but actually, in real terms, it is tax evasion. Just for the benefit of our viewers, if this pen, if we are importing this pen or a spare part, we say, look, we're a multinational entity, we are a production company, we want to import a spare part. If that spare part ordinarily will cost, say, $1 million, you will write $10 million in your books and say this is what it cost us. That's right. So what is the capacity to monitor this, to say, look, this is over invoicing, and you are shifting profits and saying, oh, the services were actually rendered by a subsidiary based somewhere in Cayman Islands or in the Seychelles or elsewhere.
Thank you, Kingsley. I like that concern and the passion with which you spoke about it. And this has always been a concern over the years, really. In FRS, there are statutes that talk about transactions not being at arm's length, commercial values of prices and all of that. But because we didn't really have a group of people, or like a division that focused on that and specialized, these multinationals were getting away with a lot of things here and there. I agree with you. It's so easy for a multinational to make the cost to be so high here and shift the profit to some high havens where tax havens where it will not be taxed, Cayman Islands, like you have mentioned, the Bahamas and all of that. So this consciousness made the FRS to have a division called the Transfer Pricing Division. I think one of my colleagues had mentioned that before. And the increase in the awareness of it made that division to actually be elevated to a whole department. It's now called the International Tax Department. But the whole of what they do there is transfer pricing audit to identify multinationals, to identify even Nigerian companies that have affiliates here and there and have things to do with companies outside the country where the risk elements are. And so these guys are being trained, they are being retrained. In fact, in the last 2 weeks, there were a number of consultants that came abroad to also still impart some knowledge into them. And several of such have been lined up in the course of the year so that they come up to meet up with international standards and be able to get these companies and the antics of the consultants that do this planning. So we are actually doing a lot in the regards to that. And let me also assuage your fears to a large extent in terms of these multinationals getting away with not paying taxes in Nigeria. The significant economic presence issue that Mr. Iri mentioned was to identify the fact that we needed to tax foreign companies, even when they don't have fixed base here. Now this is the area of digitalized economy. There are a lot of things happening on the internet. There are a lot of things going on here and there, and hence the rule about SEP, significant economic presence, and then Finance Act 2020 went further to still say that where it comes to value-added tax, you know, because our mindset before was that, oh, these companies could not be located, and therefore let's make their Nigerian customers to be held responsible. If somebody does business for you, instead of him charging the VAT and paying us, let the Nigerian do that. We trust the Nigerian more. But I think every 2020 is like I don't give a damn. The multinational, the foreign company should register for VAT, charge the VAT, and pay it like any other Nigerian company. And we want to implement that to the extent that those who will not comply to that will block them off. Kenya did that. If you are not ready to subscribe to our laws, register, charge what you are supposed to pay, and pay your appropriate taxes, then somehow digitally they will track you and they will make business continuity impossible for you. That's like Abubakar said, we now have the Riot Act, and we intend to just implement without minding whose ox is being God. I want to tell you that before the end of this year, probably by the grace of God, we'll see huge deliveries in this particular regard. Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, you're all heading groups, you know. D-Ray is the coordinating director, compliance support group. Oluwafemi, you are coordinating director, tax operations group, and of course, Abubakar, coordinating director, executive chairman's group. Now, let's talk about the integrity of your staff, because that is, it makes a lot of sense to understand the level of integrity of your staff. You know, who are the operators of whatever policy or administrative or administration, you know, that you have. How do you guarantee that? You know, because in some cases, some persons will believe that some of your staff may be conniving with not just individuals, but even the corporate entities, especially the foreign companies. You know, in tax evasion. Is there any mechanism put in place by FIRS, you know, to checkmate their staff, understand their operational methods, and whatever what they're doing is in compliance with the tax laws and administration of the FIRS? I'd like to bring in Abubakar here.
Okay, thank you very much. We have our core value, and the core value of the service is professionalism, efficiency, and integrity. And also ownership. That is, every staff is supposed to demonstrate this attribute. In addition, we carry out regular training. In these training sessions, these areas have been emphasized. And again, we have various levels of, we have various activities in the various groups. These activities are in a way that you have both vertical and horizontal working relationship. In this, for example, you take audit. For example, if staff are sent out on audit, that might not be that won't be the end. They know very well that at the end of the day, there's another department that will review the outcome of that audit. So you have at the back of your mind that whatever you want to do, whether to do some shady deals, you have a next level that will actually checkmate that. So those are kind of in the system. Those are the measures we put in place.
And hoping we don't have a network of collaboration among the different departments.
Sometimes, again, I think the challenge we also face, I think, from the taxpayers themselves. Sometimes people want to minimize their tax liability, and of course, in doing that, you want to negotiate with the tax officer. So in most cases, it's even initiated by the taxpayer. And we know the kind of environment we are is either you totally disagree, or by the time you start going into and you are lower into negotiations, if care is not taken, then you get into trouble.
Okay, let me add
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you see, let me start from what happened last week as part of the way to encourage people to uphold good moral standards. The executive chairman had cause to address the whole staff of FRS via virtual means. And in commending, he specifically brought out some staff who have done some good things that is worth mentioning, and they needed to be commended and also rewarded. And to me, that serves as an encouragement to people that this is the way you should go. This is an example to follow. And they were publicly mentioned, and what they did was also explained, and the reward that was given was also explained. Then just to add to what my colleague have said, ML Abubakar, there are various levels of quality assurance that we have already put in place. You do your work. Another department, for example, there's a department we call Policy and Process Monitoring Department, who goes to the field to check that the staff or what they are supposed to do are complying with the set standard and the process that they're supposed to follow to achieve those. When deviations are observed, they are flag up, and the appropriate sanctions are taken against such staff. So these are some of the measures that we have put in place.
Quickly chip in to what have been said. In truth, we have an administration now that has what I would call zero tolerance for corruption. And at every level, there is what we call whistleblowing opportunity. Yes. You can just send information to the highest quarters, even to the level of the executive chairman, and report cases of suspected infractions to our code of ethics. And besides that, in the office of the chairman, there's what is called, well, this is service-wide anyway, but ours is very functional. I mean, the anti-corruption and transparency unit, which is a group of people that are monitoring that integrity and morals are in place within the system. And theirs is to fish out bad elements, and where necessary, they work in collaboration with EFCC and these security agencies all over the place. I can assure you that things are under control at FIRS, particularly at this time. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, we'd like to thank you. In the meantime, we're going to have to take a short break. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State. Broadcasting in a digital economy, Maxwell Logo gives an insight. This edition also features Nancy Naji of AIT, a name synonymous with business. Meet the NCDC boss, Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, also x-rays the relevance of social media in the modern society. Meet some TV professionals who have impacted their spaces and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Mommy is ready to receive me a bundle of joy. Mommy is making my home cleaner and safer. We are Dettol Sure.
Illnesses can happen at home too. That's why Dettol and me together will make my baby's home safe and to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs. That's why moms want to be Dettol. Dettol Sure.
We are Dettol, Dettol Sure.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
All right, you're welcome back, and you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service. I want to return to ML Abubakar, who at some point was the secretary of the tax appeal tribunals. I was just wondering, when you're talking about the integrity of tax officers, you did mention that sometimes the issues of integrity just might arise from a potential taxpayer who is seeking a reduction in the accessible tax to be paid by that particular individual. How well are taxpayers with grievances taking advantage of the various tax appeal tribunals, and how well are the tribunals themselves performing?
Yes, thank you very much. The tax appeal tribunals, we know, is tax dispute mechanism. It's not a court per se. Rather, they carry out, maybe if you like, you call it administrative platform to settle tax dispute. So what happened, we have 8 tax appeal tribunals across the country. We have in Lagos and Abuja, and of course 1 in each of the geopolitical zones. The appeal tribunals entertain cases from all the categories of taxpayers and also from tax authority. It could be either way, other tax authorities reporting taxpayers to the tribunal, or taxpayers reporting tax authority to tribunal where there are disputes. So to that extent, whatever process that took place, the procedures that took place in at tribunal, if at the end of the day either of the party is not satisfied with the judgment of the tribunal, it can go to court, and the first place to go after that is the Federal High Court. If, however, there is settlement at the tribunal, then that is taken to the Federal High Court, and it's assumed that the Federal High Court would adopt it as if the judgment was that of a Federal High Court. And if you want to appeal, however, if you still want to appeal against that kind of judgment, you still have to go through the Federal High Court. So that shows that the tax tribunal itself is just a quasi legal body to entertain dispute administratively.
How well are they performing, and how well are their services being utilized in the sense of grievances?
Tremendously, they are carrying out their job. They are assigned responsibility tremendously. For example, in Lagos, at the beginning of in 2017, when the present set of the commissioners were inaugurated, there were about over 200 cases. And as at date, I think they've, close more than 100 cases have been had, and settlements have been reached at certain levels, and a lot of taxes have been recovered. For example, I recall at the end of last year, over 200 billion naira was recovered, and in naira, and in dollar, about $15 billion was also recovered from some companies. And state tax authorities are also taking advantage of the tribunal in their respective locations, and there are judgments too in favor of such states. And of course, certain judgments also are also in favor of the taxpayer, and so it has been a success, so to say.
Now, there are, in fact, since the advent of COVID-19 early last year, many companies folded up, while some companies suffered a big hit, because of the pandemic. How do you do a reassessment of such companies? Because invariably, the possibility of such companies being able to pay its usual normal tax, may not be there. Is there any form of consideration in your tax laws that accommodates such a situation where perhaps in a case of a pandemic or perhaps any other form of economic crisis that could hit a particular company? How are they considered?
Let me start from what happened last year. In the wake of the pandemic and the ensuing NSAS protests or the looting or whatever, the havoc that happened, the Federal Revenue Service, for example, introduced some palliative in terms of giving extension of when to file, when to pay certain taxes like VAT and income tax. But as we speak today, the Finance Act itself has introduced some other support to help businesses, in the sense that for example, if they have an issue as to their records, they can submit what we call management account, or what FRS is going to come out to as a guideline to help them. Not necessarily insisting on the audited account as to be audited by consultant and all this that costs them money. And also whatever money that is spent towards rehabilitating some of this destruction that happened, they are allowed as in form of donation that can be expense in their system. So these are some of the measures that have been put in place to help a taxpayer. But of course, each one will be handled on case-by-case basis on their merit as they come up with issues, as the issue come up.
Okay, I would have asked you this question, but I'm going to pose it to Oluwani, because you are with tax compliance. But why does the Apex Tax Authority, in this case FIRS, complain about the non-remittance of VAT collected by various entities? Wherever you go to a shop or you go and get into a transaction, you see companies or traders claiming to have a VAT collector's number or collector's ID. And yet, the amount they remit to the coffers, it's one that you grumble about. What is the problem with ensuring that if they collect and the money doesn't belong to them, they should release the money to the tax authorities?
Thank you very much. Once again, quickly. I think it still boils down to what we all know, that there's this general apathy in terms of the culture of paying taxes in Nigeria. The compliance level is low. The average Nigerian doesn't want to pay. Even like one of my colleagues had said earlier, in VAT that you have mentioned, the convention is for the provider of the business to charge as an agent and remit to the tax authorities. But at some point when we realized that much of this money was being diverted, companies would rather make use of the VAT as part of their working capital. Mm-hmm. We had to say, okay, at least to the extent of those that are supposed to be our sisters, I'm talking of government agencies, these monies go back to them. And even the corporate world, those that have integrity perceived, the IOCs, for example, were appointed to begin to capture the VAT. Instead of remitting through the agent, take it at source, the same VAT that was charged them. Like FIRS would want to pay a contractor now at this point in time. We just thought, is there any sense in paying the VAT through that contractor for the money to come back to FIRS? Why not let FIRS pay it to its coffers, I mean, to tax coffers. So that amendment was made to see that we help ourselves. Unfortunately, it came out to be seen that even the MDAs were not exhibiting integrity enough in this area. A lot of unremitted money that we have discovered, and you don't go about enforcing MDAs as such. You know, do you go about closing down a ministry, and all these things came? So it became a challenge. Well, summarily, where I'm going is that we have discovered that in terms of manual efforts, we can only do so much. We can do so much, we can make examples of people, but the culture seems so difficult to change. Hence, this issue of automation technology that we are emphasizing that has come on board now by the grace of God.
And that's where I wanted to go with respect to technology, which you want to deploy this time around. Because if you do business in any of the MDAs, you have so many taxes. You have withholding tax, you have VAT, you have education tax, you have stamp duty, and what have you. The monies, where do they go? Is it to FIRS?
Yeah.
Are they remitted to FIRS?
Yeah, yes.
They are supposed to be remitted to FIRS, but that's not the case. We are not getting the full amount that they deduct.
And
so
those taxes are even discouraging some contractors.
Yeah, so
at the end of the day, if you are given a contract of perhaps 1 million naira, as case maybe, they remove 20% of it. The entire 20%, withholding tax is about 10%, VAT is about 7.5%, then education tax about 2%, and withholding tax 1%. So you have about 19 or 20% gone from the country.
Let me correct one or two things. The education tax you mentioned has nothing to do with being taken at source. I thought that can only come at the end of the year when the taxpayer files his returns, and it must be paid directly, not through any agent. So education tax can quickly be removed from that list. And then also the issue of withholding tax. Withholding tax, you said 10%, it may not be 10. In most cases, particularly in construction contracts, is still 5%. I think there was even a time, maybe currently now it's 2.5%. I think it's even 2.5% now, not 10%.
The majority of transactions, other than construction, which you have now excluded, withholding tax is 10%. I mentioned earlier that look, if for those who have, if you have a fixed deposit and the thing yields interest at maturity, and the interest rate is very low now, even that low value is withholding tax is 10%. Are the banks remitting this money? Where does that withholding tax go to?
Okay, now
To put it a bit, starkly, like a man on the street would say, are these entities just taking this money from you, or use the word stealing the money from you?
I heard that withholding tax means they withhold it and perhaps to pay it back to you with time. I don't know. So if you're
not at all. But the tax officers are here.
So where does it go to?
The truth is this: just as my colleague said, Luani, the culture of Nigerian is what is playing out. Manually, we are limited to the extent that we can monitor or police these people. But with technology now, which we have, this is our focus for this year, which the president have also given a mandate. We want to link our system with the source of payment. Like we have a payment like GiftMe, for example, is a source of payment for government agencies. We want at that point that government money is being paid to the contractor, whatever is taxed there, whether VAT or withholding tax, automatically swept into the pool account at CBN. And we want all this remitter payment gateway to be linked to FRS system, such that at any point money is going to remitter, the VAT or the withholding tax or the tax that element of it is swept automatically to CBN. Then we also want to have auto collect with all these some of these supermarket agencies that businesses that offer service. We are at the point of making that sales. The tax that is involved, which mostly VAT now, for example, is swept automatically to the VAT pool account.
Why was this not done before? There is no shop you go to
Yes.
in Abuja or in Lagos. When you get to the till that they are not registered like this, you see VAT 7.5%.
Yes.
Since, of course, it became 7.5%.
Yes, last year. Now, the challenge is the political will was not there. We're also having resistance. And that is why we must commend the president for coming out this time to give that marching order that every agency, every business in Nigeria must allow FRS to plug into their system to sweep away whatever tax that is due to the government coffer.
And let me also try to answer that your direct question. Why not before? To a large extent, we had legal inhibitions. What I mean by that is that we needed the statutes to be able to allow us to deploy this technology, or at least for the business person there to succumb to whatever we are deploying. In the early days before this amendment that came now, because thankfully the Finance Act 2020 has taken care of that whatever we deploy must be subscribed to. Otherwise, it becomes an offense. In those days, when we tried to do this, that's the kind of resistance that you will hear. As a matter of fact, people will tell you that the law allows me to hold the VAT I've collected till the 21st day of the following month. So why are you capturing it immediately? Why are you taking it at source? And then if they go to court, they will have won. And so we were always pushing on the ground to see that these legal things were taken care of. And it wasn't until this administration gave us this leeway.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Oluwani. I just wanted Ahmed Abubakar to speak to this before we call it today. Very quickly. We keep hearing of tax waivers. Usually these are to corporate entities, but under pay-as-you-earn or personal income tax, much more specifically, what has happened to the regime of reliefs that individuals could get in some jurisdictions, as you are aware, even though we know that taxation, of course, is country-specific. In some jurisdictions, when you spend money on home improvement, on home improvement, some of these things are taxable. In a home or house that you live in, some of these things are tax deductible. There are other kinds of expenses on dependents and so on and so forth. And when you look at our environment, where the social safety net is very weak, in most cases non-existent, everybody is struggling to build a house. Whether a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, quickly just do it, and so on and so forth. You're all struggling to be on the road, to transport yourself. Another. Why? Within that, there are also capital acquisitions that you get, but for home improvement and things like that, that will reduce also the cost of social funding by government for persons who are homeless. I'm just wondering, whatever name you call it, why are we not having a raft of such tax reliefs? Assuming there are, please let us know.
And instead of that, what we're having the incentives for foreign investors, which of course is complaining about.
Yeah, we may not be doing as expected, as you rightly said, but in other areas, for example, people in employment, recently, as we have seen, as I said earlier, employees under the minimum wage are automatically tax exempt. Even small businesses whose turnover are below 25 million naira are tax exempt. What we just encourage them to continue to file in case they measure up above the threshold. So a lot of incentive has been given to individuals. For example, even in the current 2020 Finance Act, compensation for loss of office has been to a limit of 10 million naira has been tax exempt. In the past, if you are compensated for loss of office, is put to tax adequately. But now, only the first 10 million naira will be put to tax, and then the only excess of 10 million that will be put to tax.
Okay.
So those are incentives that we have seen to individuals.
All right, so we'll stop it there. Let's see how that plays out. But I'm not sure Kingsley's question has been adequately answered. No, there's no time for that for now. No, there's no time for that now. Because if Nigeria begins to feel the impact, we will know. All right, so at this point, we'd like to appreciate all of you for being part of our show this morning. First of all, Dick Ire. Dick Ire is, of course, the Coordinating Director, Compliance Support Group. It's a pleasure.
Thank you,
Oluwafemi Oluwani, thank you for coming here. He is the Coordinating Director, Tax Operations Group. It's been a pleasure too.
You're welcome.
And then Mohammed Lawal Abubakar, who has always been here for us on Good Morning Nigeria, is the Coordinating Director, Executive Chairman's Group. It's also a pleasure talking to you this morning.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, the next is sports.
Sunshine